Let's bring in Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, the only Republican member of Congress from New York City. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get your take on the mayor's race here in New York City. You've already decided who you're voting for.
I've endorsed Curtis Sliwa for multiple reasons. One, Curtis is somebody who has decades of experience working and helping New York City from his heart, not in an elected position. He has dealt extensively with the homeless and mentally ill, helping them transition off the streets. He's somebody who knows our transit system inside and out. I don't think there's one line on the subway that he does not know about, and he's worked on those subways helping people. And in addition, when it comes to public safety, he founded the Guardian Angels, and so he's very familiar about what we need to keep our streets safe. And so I'm supporting him also because he differentiates himself from the rest of the crowd. You have three Democrats in there, whether it's Zohan or Cuomo or Mayor Adams. I mean, these are the characters who gave us the things that we don't like in New York City: congestion pricing, making it a sanctuary state, housing illegal migrants in hotels, and some other policies like bail reform. We want somebody who's actually going to reverse some of those policies, clean up the streets, make us safe, and support our law enforcement.
Just want to get your take on something that's generated a lot of conversation here in the city. President Trump's threats to take over the city should Mamdani be elected. Just your comments on that.
Look, I think the federal government may have to intervene on certain matters if there's not going to be a cooperation from the city. In particular, my district has been very concerned about the migrant shelters. I did a FOIL request, and there were 16,000 crimes committed by 4,000 individuals that were being housed at these shelters at taxpayer expense. If we're going to have a mayor who's not going to cooperate with the federal government to deport criminals or gang members, then that's a problem, and we're going to have to intervene. What I don't want to see, though, is New York City being penalized in a fiscal way. And I've made that very clear to the administration and to my colleagues, that it's one thing to say we're going to stop allowing New York City to use money to provide services for people who are in our country illegally. But if they're going to try to strip New York City of critical funds that the taxpayers benefit from, different services that we need in our city, then that's when we have to draw the line. And I certainly will, as New York City's only Republican voice in Washington.
So let's change topics. Let's take a look at that big budget bill that was just passed in Congress. The president calling it a big, beautiful bill. The critics have talked about some of their concerns. They have concerns about deficits and Medicaid cuts. You supported this bill. Why was it important to you to see it passed?
Well, I felt like this was a very balanced piece of legislation. First, it is really a first time that I'm seeing government actually focus on giving working and middle-class families their money back. There is tremendous benefits for working Americans, for our senior citizens, particularly the deduction that we're giving to seniors, where 88% of seniors across the country will see their Social Security tax either reduced or completely eliminated through these deductions. That was my bill that made it to the final package. I'm very proud of that, because our seniors who are on Social Security should be able to keep more of their money, and it helps them get by. The SALT deduction, state and local tax deduction, we needed that here in New York. Why? Because, again, the state, the city keeps taxing New Yorkers to death. We see the property tax levy increase year after year. The SALT deduction at $40,000, and it's capped, so only middle-class families qualify. It's not for millionaires or billionaires. This will really help so many Americans, including 98% of the people in my district will benefit from that SALT deduction. And so that was significant relief. But we've also seen the child tax credit, the standard deduction, also increasing. Those were set to be cut in half at the end of the year. In my district alone, you have 350,000 people that take the standard deduction. You have 95,000 families that take the child tax credit. So it's significant relief. Now, on the Medicaid piece, we tailored this to make sure that New York keeps its match rate. It doesn't change. They still get what they receive in terms of matching from the federal government. What we did was focus on the waste, the fraud, abuse, which we know is rampant. here in New York. Our governor, our attorney general, our controller have admitted to it. In fact, the attorney general just released an indictment about a week ago of transportation companies that were bilking the system. What we do is focus on the waste, fraud, and abuse. We put in provisions to ensure that in a roundabout way, people who are in our country illegally don't benefit from those funds. And we also make sure that we take off people that are not eligible for the program. If you're not eligible and you're receiving it currently, that means you're a fraudster. And so the only change aside from that are reasonable work requirements, asking people to work, volunteer, or learn part-time, so it'd be 20 hours a week. And this is for able-bodied, mentally well individuals who are young and able to contribute. And by the way, 90%, by the way, of the Medicaid recipients on the expansion population that we're talking about here already do work. And so people should know that seniors, disabled, children with disabilities, all children, as a matter of fact, pregnant women are fully protected, and they do not have to adhere to those work requirements. Neither do people that are beneath the federal poverty level.
Now, there have been some concerns raised, about how the impact this will have on the deficit. The Congressional Budget Office estimates the bill is going to increase the national debt by $3 trillion over the next decade. You worried about that at all?
Well, the Congressional Budget Office has previously been wrong with estimates like that. As a matter of fact, in 2017, when the Tax Cut and Jobs Act passed, they were off by $1.5 trillion in additional revenue. We never even saw the full potential of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act because COVID hit, and obviously that had an effect on our economy. So I think the same thing is here. We put in place a lot of pro-growth, pro-jobs policies that will increase our tax revenue on success, not by hammering, working and middle-class people. We put in provisions that will attract manufacturing back to the United States. We put in provisions to incentivize people to buy American. So, for example, if you buy an American-made vehicle, you will be able to deduct the interest on that loan completely. So that will help also middle-class families. But the idea here is to grow the economy and bring in tax revenue that way, as opposed to hammering people who are hardworking Americans. There's other provisions in there too that help the working class. We reduce taxes on tips. We reduce taxes people who work overtime. This bill has really been focused on working Americans. And a matter of fact, for all their talk about this being about billionaires, it's simply not true. The top 1% will actually pay a little bit more because we're taking away some of those deductions or limiting the deductions that they can qualify for.